Hello and welcome back to the Wild Review. Today we'll be looking at Wonder Woman 1984. This just released in theaters this past weekend, and it also released on HBO Max. Now, I don't usually give out spoiler warnings because some of these movies have been out for some time, the last few I've reviewed, but for this one, spoilers. There will be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned that there are spoilers. Okay, good. Great. So, Wonder Woman 1984 is directed by Patty Jenkins. It's starring Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig, and Pedro Pascal. We don't know the budget for this movie because I just don't have that information available to me right now, but we do know that the budget for Wonder Woman original was $150 million, and the worldwide box office for the 2017 Wonder Woman was $818 million. So it made a lot of money back. And so you can assume that the budget for this will be inflated. I'll be tweeting out the budget once I know more, so you can follow me at Wild761 on Twitter. I'm not a gigantic Wonder Woman fan, but I did enjoy the New 52 comic books, especially the first run by Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang. I read those and thoroughly loved them, and I was really excited for the movie when it came out in 2017. I'm a huge fan of the 2017 Wonder Woman. I think it's probably DCEU's best movie, maybe second best, next to Man of Steel, which I also really enjoyed. And I was really surprised by what came with Wonder Woman 1984. First of all, I wasn't super excited about the aesthetic of the movie, but I was willing to look past that, and I was really excited to see it. I had a lot of faith in Patty Jenkins. She directed the first movie, and so coming back to direct the second movie, I thought boded really well, and I was really excited for it. The plot in Wonder Woman 1984 revolves around this wish stone, and what it does is if you make a wish, it's like a monkey's paw, where you get your wish, but it also takes something very valuable away from you. Pedro Pascal plays Max Lord, who wishes himself to become the Dreamstone, and now he goes around granting everyone's wishes and taking from them what he wants to make himself more powerful. As a side effect of this, Kristen Wiig's character, Barbara Minerva, becomes as powerful as Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman wishes for Steve Trevor to come back from the dead.
Why?
Now, with all these things in effect, Wonder Woman needs to figure out how to stop Max Lord from granting the world's wishes and causing chaos across the entire globe while giving himself power. And that's kind of the crux of this plot. The plot is a little more convoluted than that, but in general, that's kind of the basic layout of it. There's a lot going on, and it tries to tie into the 1984 time period and use all these, like the Cold War and the instability in the Middle East and all these elements to kind of build the story up. Unfortunately, a lot of that falls pretty flat as there's no real build up for any of that. I think a lot of stuff just happens in this movie and there are very little consequences surrounding that. Pedro Pascal's Max Lord is, every time he grants a wish, his body seems to deteriorate. But because he can take what he wants, he also just builds it back up, so there's no consequence. He just becomes more powerful. Wonder Woman wishes Steve Trevor into existence, and Steve Trevor takes over someone else's body when he comes back. And he has a different face, but Wonder Woman only sees Steve Trevor. It's a really, really weird thing, and it makes me super uncomfortable. It's he literally steals someone else's life for a few days while he's back, and him and Wonder Woman have a relationship while he's in this body. It it wasn't very well thought out. I don't know why they made that specific choice, but it doesn't matter. It literally just gets completely brushed aside and completely ignored. And if you think about it from a moral standpoint, it's pretty gross and scary. And if you don't think about it, I guess you just have to turn your brain off and watch this movie. But for me, watching it the first time, that was a huge concern. I'm like, he's literally in someone else's body. He took over someone else's life, but they just brushed it aside because she wants Steve Trevor back, and they wanted Chris Pine back in this movie, and Yeah, it's a little gross. It's a little disturbing, but yeah, that's just a drop in the bucket for Wonder Woman 1984. The bigger issues surrounding this movie are concerning some of the character building they've done with the villains and new characters they've introduced to this movie. This movie essentially centers around the four leading actors. Pedro Pascal's Max Lord is phenomenal. He brings so much weight to this movie that even though a lot of his actions as Max Lord don't have consequences, he himself, with his tremendous acting, really goes a long way to saving this movie from being a total dumpster fire. And part of that is that they gave him a lot to work with. They give his character actual depth, and they let him act it out. They give him the tools to work with, and he brings his skill set, and it's a tremendous performance.
I am not a loser. He's a loser. And don't you ever believe a word that man said. He's a liar. And he's wrong.
I mean, it's the only thing that actually brought any ounce of emotion out of me in this movie. They give him a very complex backstory that's shown throughout the movie. They give him a complex relationship with his son, who's introduced early into the movie to build up that emotional connection. And they really do a lot to show that he's willing to sacrifice everything to make his dream work. Even though his dream is literally destroying the world around him. Like I said, Pedro Pascal is the highlight of this movie. On the other end of this, you have Barbara Minerva, who's played by Kristen Wiig. And I've seen somebody describe this movie as having two villain syndrome, which is where you have two villains and you can't give them equal screen time, so they are both unfilled. But Max Lord is fully fleshed out and a full, real character you actually understand. Whereas Barbara Minerva is really just cast aside. I was so disappointed because I know that Cheetah is a long-running villain in the Wonder Woman series. She's one of the rival villains to the character, and I feel like she just does nothing throughout this movie. It's pretty disappointing, and especially in a movie about a woman who has such agency, that's Wonder Woman, and having another woman cast across from her who also could bring that kind of power to the table, someone who can rival her. Seeing them really kind of just not do anything with that character is so disappointing. She's on screen a lot, but she never does, like, they never do anything to really flesh out why she's doing what she's doing. And it has to be inferred from some of the scenes beforehand, and then what you know about the curse of the wishing stone and all these things. And instead of them really giving you more depth into her character, you kind of there's no flashbacks, there's no explanation of her backstory. You just know that, oh, she's a geologist and a gemstone forensics scientist or something, and she wants to be popular. And now she's as strong as Wonder Woman, but she doesn't want to give that up, and that makes her evil. And that's it. That's the story you get for her. And it's very unsatisfying. I was really hoping that they would give Kristen Wiig something more to work with. I don't know why they didn't. They clearly have the writing capacity to do so. Like I said, Max Lord's character was so good, and the cheetah just falls so flat. I mean, this cheetah doesn't run. One of the other things that I don't think does a great service to this movie is bringing Chris Pine back as Steve Trevor. I don't like the manner they did it in, but also, equally importantly, is I don't like that they felt the necessity to bring him back to give Wonder Woman's character more depth. It's a really tired trope, and it's really lazy. We need to stop defining female characters by their relationships to men or their exes. Wonder Woman has lived for 65 years after the death of Steve Trevor. And when he's back, she tells him she hasn't felt alive since he died. That is so weak. I don't expect her to like just get over it. I think it's okay that she has like pictures of him around her apartment or has a picture of him around the apartment. Like she needs to like she acknowledges that she loved him at some point, but also she's a strong woman. She moves on. And she like there's a lots of other things happening in her life that she takes joy in, like her work and being Wonder Woman and all these things. Like she clearly enjoys that. At the opening of the movie, you see it. But for some reason they try to drag this sad angle out that she doesn't feel complete without Steve in her life.
I'll never love again.
And that doesn't track for me at all. I mean, it made sense that she fell in love with him in the first movie, but she was completely independent before without him, and she's lived for another 60 years after that too. So like, what is this idea that she doesn't know, like life doesn't taste as sweet without Steve Trevor? It really cheapens the character and takes away from her own agency, and I think that's so lazy. I mean, if you had to bring back Chris Pine, that's fine, but don't make it like, oh hey Steve, you're back, I did wish for this, but I've also been seeing other people, so like this is a little awkward. And then Steve can be like, no, it's cool, I've been dead for 60 years, it's fine, I still love you though, and then he can like fade away into the sunset or whatever. It doesn't, like, I don't know why, like, they have to make her so sad.
I mean, no one's made me laugh like this in such a long time.
And they have this sad scene of, like, her eating at a restaurant alone, and there's, like, sad music behind it. Like, once again, she's been doing this for 60 years. I've eaten at a restaurant by myself. It's not sad. You bring a book. You enjoy a good meal. It's not the end of the world. The fact that she's pining over some guy for 60 years is bad. And I don't know. I don't like it at all. One of the things that I've seen said online is that Wonder Woman 1984 is a like love letter to classic superhero movies. And it feels like it is. Like, it feels very comic booky. They toned down the violence and like the grittiness from the 2017 movie, which is fine. But it also tries to capture this era that I don't think it fully understands enough to capture. It ends up feeling campy and a little tone deaf. And the movie, while set in 1984, it does a lot of things with costuming that still feels very modern. And since the politics don't play a major role in the movie as well, all these things that just end up not working together in any kind of harmony. One of the things you'll also notice about Wonder Woman 1984 is that it has a totally different feel than the 2017 movie. The 2017 movie was very gritty and dark and looked at both the wonderfulness of human nature but also the gritty terribleness. Whereas 1984 kind of just feels much more saccharine filled. I mean, like, yes, some awful things happen in the movie, but you don't really see any of it. I mean, it says like, oh, this is gonna start wars, but you don't actually see any fighting. All of Wonder Woman's fight scenes feel really cartoony and really kind of silly almost. And even though like she gets injured once or twice, there's no real consequence to her for it. The movie it feels like it lacks an impact, and it doesn't really earn any of the gravitas it tries to deliver throughout the course of the story. And so while it's set in 1984 as a love letter to this era of comic books, I don't feel like it really captures the spirit and the gravitas that they had at the time, and this movie kind of falls flat in that sense. One of the most offensive parts of this movie is a character they introduce about halfway who has the secret to the crystal that Max Lord has acquired to turn himself into this wishing stone. And his name is Frank Patel.
So you're a Mayan?
Well, I'm a citizen of the world.
Says your name is Frank.
And most of what I know is a past life thing.
So that's a no.
But
the whole scene just feels so weird, and he's teaching yoga out of some like shitty studio next to a record label. I mean, how do they track this guy down? Why is his information reliable? Why does he even add this information? Like, there's this whole like plot hole of like, what the hell is this, and what were they thinking? with this character, and it just feels so cringy. It just, you know, I don't know what to tell you about that. It just doesn't feel good. It doesn't make any sense, and I hated every moment of it. So, Wonder Woman 1984, is it a good movie? I'm going to say it's objectively not a good movie. While it has some competent cinematography, the CGI is very, very iffy. The storytelling is very muddled. The action sequences are shot pretty shoddily. They don't. There's a lot of things that are missing from this movie from making it entertaining, and it's a long movie. It's 2.5 hours, and it feels like a slog through that movie. I don't know what the plan was going into this movie, but whatever their objective was, I'm pretty sure they didn't achieve it. At least I hope not, because if this was their objective, it's not great. Like I said, there's a lot of problematic elements to the storytelling. A lot of characters that are central to the plot aren't well defined or aren't well thought through, and Wonder Woman herself lacks agency throughout the movie, and so it like the protagonist we follow just doesn't do anything. It's not great. As far as the wild side of this, do I like this movie? No. No, I'm a huge comic book fan. I loved Wonder Woman from 2017. This movie should have been a smash out of the ballpark. Like, I should have loved this movie. And this movie just left me with a lot of questions, and most of them were why did you do this? So no, I did not like Wonder Woman 1984. I don't think it's necessarily a horrendous movie. I don't think it's a dumpster fire. I just don't think it's enjoyable, especially like for a second watch. I don't think I will probably never watch this movie again and be okay with that. It's a movie I saw, and now I've talked about it. All the decades, 20s, 30s, modern. Stay tuned.